Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon. Yes, there are some questions. Yes, we will go through them. But non-related topic. But what we'll do is we'll try to cover up today's session and then take up these questions because what I've been hearing is the session has to start with the topic and then take up the topics which was related to previous period. Yeah. ठीक है. So yes, lot of questions, Asta. I acknowledge your questions and Chauhan, your questions also. Uh, yes, the uploading, I understand from the Board of Studies that there is some issue with the website and they said they will do it by today. I have sent everything. Probably it should get uploaded in today or tomorrow's time. Okay. Now we'll discuss on today's topic and then Asta Sethi, you can ask your questions at the end of the session so that we are tilting the position and we are coming back. So that every time we take the questions first and then go to the topic. Today we are concentrating on the topic, what we have for today, and then we will take up the questions related to previous sessions. Now, what is this? What is this? The presentation, the start itself, we are not seeing the opening slide, but we are seeing some other slide. What is this? It's a cake. Yes. Why is the cake kept over here for you today? The cake is kept for you. Yeah. It is for you. Yes, Nidhi, it is a cake. It is a cake for you that you have ordered a cake and the cake is ready. Yes, it is for us. Yes, instead of sweet box today, it is a cake. Yes. The sweet box couldn't get delivered, right? Because the e-way bill officer has told it saying that you have not generated an e-way bill. So it is still on hold. Or might probably now they would have sold it because for perishable goods, we know, right? That if it is perishable good, the officer can auction it off or sell it off. So, but that should not happen with this cake, right? So you have ordered a cake and you have told the shopkeeper, you have given him full money and you have given the advance amount to him. And now you are asking him to deliver the cake to you. Okay. So this is the cake which you have ordered. And when you go to him, what does he give you? When you go to him, he says, okay, you have ordered for a cake. Here is your cake. Huh? What was ordered and what is received? What is the Was it you have ordered for a full cake and what did you get? Are you getting a full cake? No. क्या हो गया? 1/4 is missing. Okay, some piece is missing. Yeah, what is missing? What is that missing part? Shopkeeper scammed us. No. Glass मेरे तो. Glass. Half is already eaten. Yes. Partially delivered. Normal loss due to its nature? No, no, this is not a normal loss. He has to give the full cake, but he's deducted something. Partially delivered. Scammed. Yes, Mohammed Farhan and few others have identified. Yeah, most of you would have identified now that yes, this you have ordered for a full cake or anything for that matter. You have ordered for a cake and the person has said that I will deduct the TDS and give it to you. So whatever, this is not a scam. You have ordered for a full cake. Some portion is deducted. That portion is called deduction at source. In this cake, it is cake deducted at source, but for our topic purposes today, this is tax deducted at source. So this is how it is called as tax deducted at source. So whatever you have ordered from that, the vendor or the person will deduct something and he will give this to you. That is called as tax deducted at source. So the amount, the portion which is left over is the thing what you will actually enjoy. So this is exactly the topic for today, which is tax deducted at source and tax collected at source. Simple, very simple, but it is a tax law. So it has to be complicated, right? If it is not complicated, what is the value and what is the worth of a chartered accountant? So a chartered accountant has to make simple things complicated, and to support us, the government also is there. The government will make things really complicated and really tough so that easy things will also be tough. So that's why, even though we can see that, yes, it is simple, but there are provisions which will make it complicated. The more it is complicated, it is good for us, right? The more complicated, it is good for us. Yes, very sad, Somya, that your cake, one portion of it is gone, but that is deduction. Tax deduction is also fine, sir, but cake deduction is not acceptable. This is only to make you understand that whenever you have supplied to somebody the complete product and he has to give you the money, he will tell, I will not give you the money, I will give you only part of it. More ambiguous, more fees. You're right, Chauhan. More ambiguous than the more fees. So that is how we understand TDS. Now, cake deduction is not possible. Yes, this is just similar to this. Like if you supply something to somebody, now that person has to give you the full cash, right? You have completed your work, but will he give you the full cash? No, he will not give. He will deduct something and then give it to you. जो भी deduction होता है वो बीटीए के होता है सर या छिपाकर, बता के होता है या छिपाकर, जो भी डिडक्शन होता है टीडीएस में बता के होता है, कोई छिपाने की बात ही नहीं है यहाँ पे। तो इसीलिए तो हम पढ़ रहे हैं कि जो दिखता है और जो रूल्स बोलता है कि आपको डिडक्ट करना चाहिए वो डिडक्ट करेंगे। जैसे आपने पूरा केक मांगा था, कुछ पोर्शन उसमें से काट के आपको दिया गया, उसे कहते हैं, जो काटा हुआ है उसे कहेंगे टीडीएस। सो दैट इज द टीडीएस विच इज गॉट डिडक्टेड। Okay. TDS reduces complications as the tax is paid on spot at the time of transaction. Wouldn't say so, because you're not paying the full tax, because there is no kind of assessment which is happening by the person. He will only deduct a fixed percentage. क्योंकि गवर्नमेंट ने कह दिया कि एक परसेंटेज एक्स परसेंटेज से सिंपल, they will tell whatever you supply, you have to deduct 1% TDS. So they will deduct this TDS and give it to you. That's all. They will not deduct the whole tax. So it will actually increase the complication, because you will be charging, say, tax on your supply at 18%, but that other person will not deduct 18%. It is not reverse charge. In case of reverse charge, he will pay, right? Receiver will pay. But this is not a reverse charge. This is a different scenario where the receiver, the person to whom you're supplied, you're a supplier and the other person is a receiver will deduct some portion and give it to you. Now that deduction is not actually the tax rate, it is some percentage, because if he takes away complete tax, the responsibility is still mine. So I will have a working capital blockage. So TDS will not be complete, TDS will be just a percentage. It will be just 1%. So he will deduct 1% and give it the balance. In our cake, it is at least 25%, but actually in a TDS scenario under GST, it is just 1%. Sir, TDS deduction necessary or it's just receiver does not give full money. It is necessary for specific category of suppliers and the purchaser. TDS depends on the buyers. Now, which category of buyers are they? Are they notified buyers? Then they have to compulsorily deduct. So we have a list of buyers from who to whom you sell. You are a seller, you are selling it to specified buyers. Now, if you sell to these specified buyers, they will deduct the TDS, not everyone. So why does seller not deduct full tax? Seller will not deduct. Seller is selling. Seller will add the full tax in his invoice, right? We know the invoice rules and we know the payment. And we have learned that the supplier has to charge full tax. So he will charge the full tax and the receiver or the buyer will deduct partial tax because the act only specifies that you just deduct that much. Will TDS be refunded? Yes, it can be. It always goes to your electronic cash ledger. Great. So TDS, we have understood. We will get into the provisions, but on a understanding level, we have understood because TDS and TCS have not evolved under GST. These were all evolved under the Income Tax Act. And from there is this concept getting borrowed because it was a super hit under the income tax because government is getting the revenue faster. That's the reason they saw that yes, TDS and TCS are working under income tax, so we'll bring it under GST also. Okay, so what did I say? TDS and TCS are collected under income tax. TDS, though, we understood. Now, what is this TCS? Also, we'll have another picture for this. The TCS is that when you order for a cake, you get a cake and a piece along with it. Wow, wasn't that great? But don't be very happy. You have to pay for the cake and pay for the piece also. The piece, small piece, is not a free gift for you, saying that you have ordered a cake and I will give you this free pastry also. You have ordered for a cake, you will get a cake and a pastry also. This is additional, and for this, you have to pay. This is called tax collected at source. When you ordered something, you will definitely get that without any deduction. So that's why it's not a deduction. This is tax collected at source. When the seller sells something, he has to get the money from the buyer. Buyer will tell, I will pay you. Okay. I will pay you. And seller has to collect something more, saying that I have given you a cake. You have to pay me for the cake and pastry. Okay. So you will, as a seller, you will collect more money. Of course, you will collect the value of the goods plus GST plus some more amount you will collect from him. That is called as tax collected at source. Okay. Now we'll understand this in the context of income tax. Income tax, you all know, right? How TDS works. Suppose you are a professional, right? We are all going to be professionals. We are chartered accountants. We will raise an invoice to our customers. When we raise an invoice for audit fees of 1 lakh rupees, we will also charge GST. So when we charge GST, the customer, we are talking about income tax TDS first, the customer will pay to us 90,000 only and the GST. Because on that 1 lakh, he will deduct a TDS of 10%. So in income tax, the rate is as high as 10%. We are lucky enough that under GST, we don't have such huge percentage. But in income tax, we have huge percentage of close to 10, 20, 30% also. But here we will have only 1%. So that is how income tax, we have the provision of TDS. Okay. So when a chartered accountant provides some services, he will charge for 1 lakh rupees and the customer will pay him by deducting 10% and balance he will pay him. Clear? And in case of a TCS under income tax, when you sell something, so popular thing is scrap. When you sell some scrap, the buyer will pay you for the value of the scrap and something more. So the seller will sell the scrap and collect from the buyer 1 lakh rupees is the value of the scrap, and he will buy something, he will take some more money. say 2%, 1 lakh rupees and 2,000 he will take. The buyer will ask him, why are you collecting more money? आपने तो मुझे 1 लाख का बोला है, मैं आपको 1 लाख पे करूंगा, आप मुझसे 2,000 क्यों मांग रहे हो? The seller will say that government has said that whenever I sell scrap, okay, I have to collect additional amount and I have to deposit to the government. तो फिर 2,000 रुपये लॉस हो गया क्या बायर का? इज इट अ लॉस? नहीं, तो फिर क्या हुआ? What will happen to him? Right. So that is the additional amount what I am collecting from the buyer is for the tax, and I will deposit this tax to the government and that person will get the credit of it. So TDS and TCS is a compliance. It is not a loss. I may deduct something or I may collect additional amount. This additional amount I will deposit to the government. गवर्नमेंट के थ्रू उसको फिर से क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा. करेक्ट. दिस इज एन एडिशनल अमाउंट. समझे कि जो भी टीसीएस है मैं ज्यादा कलेक्ट कर रहा हूं लेकिन वो उसी को क्रेडिट मिलेगा. So GST is paid on value of the goods less TDS under no. GST is paid for the full value. GST में आपको कुछ रिडक्शन नहीं मिलेगा. अगर आपने if you have sold for 1 lakh rupees the service, professional services, you will charge 18%, and 18%, which is 18,000 in our example, full amount has to be paid to the government. Clear? Okay. So now we understood basically what is TDS, TCS, and how is TDS applied under the income tax. Now we'll get into GST provisions of TDS. Okay. Like how I was giving you an example. TDS is an Indian withholding tax. That means collecting tax on incomes, dividends, or assets sales by requiring the payer or a legal intermediary, because sometimes we'll finish this, requiring the payer to deduct tax due before paying the balance to the payee and the tax to the revenue authorities. So TDS is in both. I mean, the common meaning for the TDS. TDS means tax deducted at source, which is an Indian withholding tax. That means collecting a tax on income, on dividends, or asset sales. Right? Generally, it is on income. Sometimes it is on TDS. Sometimes it is on dividend, or sometimes on asset sales also. Depends on the category what the government decides, which requires the payer. If a seller and buyer is there, the buyer is generally the payer. But in some situation, the buyer is not directly involved with the seller. There is an intermediary. मतलब बीच में broker, you can call a broker, or any person who connects the seller and the buyer is an intermediary. Now this intermediary may collect it from the buyer and give it to the seller. So in that situation, this legal intermediary will have to deduct the TDS. Generally, it is the buyer, but in case when there is an intermediary involved, this intermediary will be the person who is required to deduct the tax due before paying the balance to the payee and the tax to the revenue authorities. So if the seller is raising an invoice for 1 lakh rupees, payment to government as TDS would be 10,000 rupees, and payment to the vendor 1 lakh have to pay. I have paid 10,000 to the government on your behalf. So balance 90,000 I will pay. समझ में आया? जो टीडीएस हमने बात किया वही है. अगर सप्लायर ने 1 लाख का इनवॉइस किया, आप 10,000 रुपए गवर्नमेंट को दोगे और बैलेंस जो है सप्लायर को दोगे, तो ये 10,000 क्या हो गया? टीडीएस हो गया है. And this 10K, yes, seller can claim it in his return. He can definitely claim it in his return. So why is this actually required? So I can pay him 1 lakh only directly. But how will the government have a trail? Government will, there are two advantages of TDS, many, but primarily I will tell you two. That the government gets the money in advance कि ये जो है वो रिटर्न कब फाइल करेगा, कब गवर्नमेंट को इनकम आएगा, 10,000 एडवांस में ही पैसा मिल रहा है. Second is that whether the supplier will file his return, whether disclose his income or no. I have not to, I may be worried as a government क्योंकि उसने सेल तो कर लिया लेकिन टैक्स भरेगा या नहीं भरेगा. Whether he will disclose his sales properly or no. Through this for TDS mechanism, I can get to know that yes, that this much TDS has been deducted, so he has to file his return. And if he's not filed the return, I will have a trail, audit trail की तरह जब होता है, I will have a tracing mechanism that I can see that, okay, this person has deducted the TDS. Now, if he's deducted the TDS, you are supposed to file your returns and show this much as an income, right? That is how this helps the government. If TDS is more, but actual tax liability is very less, then what happens? Good question. So if you have deducted more and the tax liability of the supplier is less, then he can claim the refund. That is definitely possible. That is allowed and legally available. So what are the advantages of TDS? It is provides a regular flow of income to the government. As we had said that supplier will sell, or in at least in income tax, you have to file your income tax return once in a year. So government has to wait once the person files the returns, he's earned the income already. So that's where TDS helps that when any supply happens on which TDS is applicable, the buyer will deduct the TDS and pay it to the government. So government को क्या है? Regularly flow आ रहा है income का. End of the year तक रुकने की जरूरत नहीं है. Monthly, whenever you are selling, because generally TDS will be deducted on a monthly basis. So whenever you do any supply, government will get the money in advance. So the first advantages is it provides a regular flow of income to the government. Second is it provides an audit trail is created and hence prevents tax evasion. Correct? So this is the same thing which we had discussed, that supplier, whether he will disclose correctly or no, we are not sure. So that's why it gives the audit trail. Keep whoever is deducting TDS, right? They will take the records from him saying that आपने किस किस का TDS deduct किया, list दो मुझे. So you will get the list and then you will check in their returns whether they have disclosed this income. Correct? So you will deduct TDS on a X value. Now that X value should be there in his income. So you can cross trail it. You can cross check it. So that's why it provides a audit trail and it definitely prevents the tax evasion. When to pay TDS, TCS to the government? Yes, we will come to that. We will tell you the due dates also. Expands the tax net. So when a supplier is unregistered, right, and he's sold some goods to a person who has to deduct TDS. So once he deducts TDS, he has fulfilled his job. Now this seller, उसके लिए तो loss हो गया because he is not registered. But government will deduct TDS. There will not be any kind of discrimination, saying that अगर आप suppliers registered supplier से pay करोगे तो खरीदोगे तो TDS deduct करो, अगर unregistered से कर रहे हो मत करो. There is no such discrimination. So whenever you are buying from a person and government has said you to deduct TDS, you have to deduct the TDS irrespective of whether the supplier is registered or unregistered. तो अगर supplier registered है, मैं डिडक्ट करूंगा और उसके अकाउंट में क्रेडिट हो जाएगा. इन हिज टैक्स अकाउंट, व्हाट आई मेंट टू से इज उसके कैश लेजर में मिल जाएगा. बट इफ ही इज अ अनरजिस्टर्ड पर्सन, मैं डिडक्ट तो करूंगा लेकिन वो क्लेम नहीं कर पाएगा. सो दैट विल बी अ लॉस फॉर हिम. सो ही विल बी फोर्स टू गेट रजिस्टर्ड, ताकि अगर वो कंटिन्यूसली ऐसे ट्रांजैक्शंस करता है जहां पे टीडीएस लगता है, देन ही विल बी फोर्स टू रजिस्टर, बिकॉज जो भी टीडीएस है उसको क्रेडिट क्लेम करना है, उसका बेनिफिट उसको लेना है. सो ही विल रजिस्टर. दैट्स हाउ द टैक्स नेट एक्सपैंड्स. मतलब जो भी पर्सन हु आर रजिस्टर्ड, दे विल इंक्रीज बिकॉज ऑफ दिस टीडीएस प्रोविजंस. ऑडिट ट्रेल क्या होता है? ऑडिट ट्रेल मतलब आपने कुछ ट्रांजैक्शन किया, उसका और ट्रेल मतलब जो आपने किया है उसका छाप, आप इसे समझ लिए जैसे एक शेयर गया है यहाँ से, ठीक है। अब शेयर इसी रास्ते से गया है, उसके लिए क्या है, उसका छाप है, राइट, उसके पैर का निशान है। सो उस रास्ते पे आप जाओगे तो पता चल जाएगा कि शेर यहाँ पे। सो दैट इज अ ट्रेल ऑफ द टाइगर मूविंग ऑन। उसी तरह अगर आपने कुछ ट्रांजैक्शन कर दिया है, करेक्ट, आपने कुछ ट्रांजैक्शन कर लिया है लेकिन आपने टैक्स नहीं पे किया है, आप बोलोगे बिल फाड़ दोगे और बोलोगे मैंने कुछ सेल ही नहीं किया है, तो ये टीडीएस प्रोविजंस आके गवर्नमेंट को ऑडिट ट्रेल देते हैं कि नहीं, इसने, बंदे ने सप्लाई किया था और सामने वाले ने टीडीएस डिडक्ट किया था, करेक्ट। तो उससे पता चल जाता है कि हाँ भैया इसने सप्लाई किया था। इफ ही इज नॉट रजिस्टर्ड, हाउ वी पे टू गवर्नमेंट एंड हाउ वी क्लेम। तो अगर वो रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है तो फिर बायर जो है टैक्स तो डिडक्ट करेगा लेकिन सप्लायर को क्रेडिट नहीं मिलेगा, क्योंकि टीडीएस किसको डिडक्ट करना है, बायर को डिडक्ट करना है। बायर रजिस्टर्ड है, सेलर अपने एग्जांपल में रजिस्टर्ड नहीं है, तो फिर क्या होगा, टीडीएस तो बायर डिडक्ट करेगा ही, सेलर का लॉस हो जाएगा, उसको अगर क्लेम करना है तो फिर वो रजिस्टर्ड करके उसका क्लेम ले सकता है। इफ बोथ अनरजिस्टर्ड, ठीक है, कितना दिन रह सकते हैं अनरजिस्टर्ड, लिमिट ही 20 लाख और 40 लाख है। इफ बोथ आर अनरजिस्टर्ड तो फिर टीडीएस की टैक्स की भी जरूरत नहीं है, टीडीएस की भी जरूरत नहीं है, because the TDS provisions applies to a person who will get registered and specific category of people. Golti Anil, what is your question? Yes, Dhanush. What I was saying is, what is the audit trail was a question. To understand that, say you've gone to a jungle and you have seen some, your very dangerous jungle. Now you want to know which way is safer for you. So you will see the footprints, you will see the flooring, and see that whether there is any footprints of lion. If you can see it, then you will know that yes, the lion has passed by just now, right? So it gives you an indication, right? No, not that one, unregistered person. Yeah. So unregistered supplier. If there's an unregistered supplier who's supplying it to a person who is required to deduct TDS. So when you're unregistered, you will not charge GST, but the receiver, he's registered, so he will deduct the TDS, right? Because TDS is not on the tax value, it is on the value of the goods. So whatever value you supply, say you supplied for 10 lakh rupees, you're unregistered. Now 10 lakh rupees, he will deduct TDS. Now to get the TDS, you will register. So that's how the tax net expands. Okay. थर्ड पॉइंट, लाइक टैक्स के नेट में लोगों को फंसाना। Fourth one was with integration of data, there exists an audit trail. So all the information will get integrated, right? The receiver will deduct, the buyer will get it, and the both, even for now. Third point was for an unregistered person. Now fourth point is for an registered person. So if a person is registered, right, then you will have to then check one step ahead to see that if this person is registered, whether he is disclosing his income correctly or no, whether he is supplying whatever he's supplying, whether he's disclosing his turnover correctly or no. That will be rooted to this fourth point, wherein through this integration of data, the audit trail exists, and what the buyer has paid for, he will disclose it correctly. The seller, whether he is disclosing the right amount or no, will get knocked off or will get checked through this integration of data. Correct. So TDS and TCS, turnover of the supplier is tracked because the receiver will deduct, when he deducts the TDS, he will mention what is the value on which he is deducting the TDS. So that value gets captured. Once it is captured, that is available to the government, and they can find out that yes, from the returns of the buyer, that these are the suppliers, what these are the values, and these are their GSTIN numbers. From their GSTIN numbers, they can check it back. Okay. Now, we understood the benefit of TDS and TCS advantages. Now, the basic provisions under the law. TDS is guided under Section 51. Okay. TDS under GST. We are now talking only of GST. Income tax was only to make you understand. You have understood that. Now, let's proceed with understanding the provisions of GST. TDS under GST is deducted under Section 51. Under 51 of the GST Act, TDS is deducted. TDS refers to tax deducted when recipient of goods makes payment to the supplier. TDS refers to the tax which gets deducted when the recipient of goods or service makes payment to the supplier. It is reflected in the electronic cash ledger of the deductee. Okay, TDS gets reflected in the electronic cash ledger of the deductee. Any base limit? Yes, there is a base limit. Can you explain how a registered buyer can deduct the TDS? How will it make the supplier liable to get registered? Sure, Malini. So, deductee, who is a deductee? Deductee is the one is the deductor, the other person on whose behalf you are deducting, he is called as a deductee. So, in our instance, the seller will be the deductor and the buyer will be the deductee. Sorry, in case of TDS, buyer is deducting. So, buyer is the deductor and seller who is getting the benefit of the deduction, he is called as the deductee. How a registered buyer can deduct the TDS? Sure, let's take an example. Correct, buyer pays. Seller will sell and buyer pays to the government. Correct, buyer has to pay, right? The person who has to pay, he is the deductor and buyer only will pay to the seller. So who has to deduct? The buyer has to deduct. Okay. Say, and this TDS provisions are 90% applicable to supplies to the government. So we will see how this happens. Yeah. So Mr. Ram is supplying goods to, say, a government organization. I would say a public sector organization. So we can say ONGC. He is supplying goods to Oil and Natural Gas Limited. Mr. Maram is supplying goods for 10 lakh rupees. Okay. On that, he will charge GST, correct? Because even if it is government, public sector undertaking, he has to charge GST. So say on this, it is 1 lakh, 18%. So 1 lakh 80,000. So total value is 11 lakh 80,000. Okay. Now Ram is supplied to ONGC. If he is registered, he will charge GST and supply it. ONGC, while they make the payment. Now, when we talk about the payment, ONGC, when they make payment to Mr. Ram, they have to pay actually it is value of the goods 11 lakh 80,000. Right now, they will deduct under the GST. Under the GST, they will deduct TDS. How much is the TDS rate? 1% is the GST rate, TDS rate, because GST rate is 18%. But ONGC, when they make payment to RAM, they will deduct only 1%. So 1% will be on what value? 10 lakhs? Yeah, 11 lakh 80,000. 10 lakhs. TDS is not related to outside the tax, Dhanush. TDS is related to tax itself. It is not outside the tax. 11,800 if Ram is registered. Yeah, in this case, Ram is registered. No, if he's charging GST, it means he is registered, because if he's unregistered, he would not have charged. So he is registered here. Correct, Chauhan. Correct, Nidhi. That he will deduct TDS on 10 lakh rupees, which is how much? 1% of 10 lakhs is 10,000 rupees. So he will deduct TDS of 10,000 rupees and balance. How much is it? 11 lakh 70,000. He will, this one, he will pay to Ram. And 10,000 paid to the government. Once you make the payment to the government, this will come back to Ram in his electronic cash ledger. Here, this is how TDS provisions work. Malini, are you clear now? Now, your question was, how does it make a person who's not registered to come into the tax method? So if Ram is unregistered, okay, we had first example where he was registered. We are all clear, no question asked, which means you are all understood that. Now we'll go to a scenario where Ram is unregistered, is supplying goods to ONGC. Value will be 10 lakhs. GST he will not charge because he is not registered. So total value is 10 lakh rupees. Payment, he has to pay 10 lakh rupees. ONGC has to pay 10 lakh rupees. TDS, they will deduct 10,000. And balance, how much will be paid? 9 lakh 90,000 rupees. Correct? Now this 10,000 is paid to the government, but will it reflect in anybody's cash ledger? It will not reflect anywhere, but this is gone to the government. Because Ram is unregistered, he will not get the credit of it. So whenever next supply he does, he will feel that, oh, I'm just giving you an example of 10,000. It could be 10 lakhs also when he's making crores of business. So that person will feel that, okay, if I'm not registered, it's a loss for me. So he will come into the tax net. 1 लाख कैसे आया? कौन सा वाला निधि? Ram cannot claim. So once a transaction is over, then you registered, you cannot claim it. For the next transaction, he can register and claim it. ONGC will deduct TDS on RCM, not on RCM. There is no question of RCM, Malini, coming here. Where is the RCM question coming here? If he get for the next transaction, he gets registered to get TDS. Will the previous deducted also will he get back? No, he will not get that back. So then 10,000 will be income to the government. Yes, it is an income. You can say income? Yeah, you can say that it's an income itself. Yeah. रिफ्लेक्ट वाला लाइन निधि ये बताता है। आप अनम्यूट कर सकते हो ताकि आपका क्या क्वेश्चन है मैं समझ लूंगा।
यस सर, जो रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन राम है सर, हमने जो टीडीएस 10,000 किया तो वो डिडक्ट कर दिया, 11,70,000 आ गया। तो जो ये 10,000 का टीडीएस डिडक्ट हो गया, गवर्नमेंट को पेड हो गया, पर ये 1 लाख विल बी रिफ्लेक्ट क्या है वो नहीं क्लियर हुआ।
हाँ, 1 लाख नहीं, वो 10,000 ही है। मैंने मिस्टेकली एक जीरो एक्स्ट्रा डाल दिया। 10,000 जो डिडक्ट किया है वो 10,000 रुपए कैश लेजर में दिख जाएगा।
सर ये किसकी बुक में दिखेगा, मिस्टर राम के?
हाँ, राम की बुक में।
जी ओके सर, थैंक यू सर।
10,000 गवर्नमेंट को हुआ, या जहाँ पे अनरजिस्टर्ड है वो 10,000 तो गवर्नमेंट का ही हुआ। फॉर टीडीएस सप्लायर्स टू फोर्सफुली रजिस्टर, अगर उसे नहीं चाहिए रजिस्ट्रेशन तो ही कैन नॉट डू इट, उसका लॉस होगा, बस इतना ही। राम का रिटर्न रिटर्न मिल जाएगा 10,000, हाँ रिटर्न मिल जाएगा, लेकिन उसका अगर जीएसटी पे करना ही है बिकॉज उसने सप्लाई किया है, तो उसको हमने देखा है कि उसका तो 1,80,000 पेएबल ही है, तो उसका जो गवर्नमेंट को पेएबल है उसमें से ये 10,000 कम हो जाएगा। Yeah, what's the benefit to the government? As we had seen in the advantages tab, it gives the audit trail. Mostly it is for audit trail than anything else. That yes, tax also is going to the government in advance, and supplier will be forced to file his return. Otherwise, that much will be the income to the government. So they need more suppliers to disclose the correct income and pay the correct tax. That is the main advantage to the government. In TDS, supplier registration will be seen, and TCS buyer's registration will be seen. TCS, yes, supplier's registration will be seen. You're right, buyer's registration. But TCS is a little different because TCS is only on an e-commerce transaction. Correct. If he registers only, then it will appear in his electronic cash ledger. You're right. Okay. So this is on the TDS part. Next is on the TCS part. Fine, Malini, did I answer your query that how the tax net gets expanded? But your question was on reverse charge. So it is not a reverse charge because in case of reverse charge, supplier will not tax anything, will not charge anything. The receiver will pay the tax. Malini? Okay. So in case of a reverse charge, supplier will pay the full tax. But in case of TDS or a TCS, the supplier, even in this case, is not charging anything, but the receiver is not kind of paying the full tax. He's only deducting 1%, small percentage, and paying. That is TDS. So there is a lot of difference between reverse charge and TDS. In reverse charge, you have to pay the full tax, and in case of TDS, you have to pay only some percentage of the tax. What is the difference between TDS deducted under GST and TDS deducted under income tax? TDS deducted under income tax, you can claim the credit of it while filing your income tax return. The deduction, what happens under GST, you can claim it in the returns while you're filing under the GST returns. Correct. TDS is applicable only in case of forward charge, right? If supplier not file the return on time, TDS lapse or not. So if it doesn't file, he can get the benefit next month also, because there is an option to call it as a your claim. So when the receiver files the return, you have to claim it. You have to go to the portal and claim it. Then it will appear in your cash ledger. If you do not file your returns this month, no problem. Whenever next month you file it, you can claim it in that month. So return filing and claim of TDS is not related, because whatever TDS is deducted will go and sit in your cash ledger, and you can utilize your cash ledger for various things. Okay, so that is on TDS. Now coming to TCS. TCS under GST is collected under section 52, but what is collected on that we will get in detail. It is basically collected under section 52. You can remember these sections, right? Next to each other. 51 is TDS and 52 is TCS. TCS refers to tax which is collected by the e-commerce operator. So TDS is for government transactions. TCS is for e-commerce transactions. TCS refers to tax which is collected by e-commerce operator when a supplier supplies the goods or services through its portal. So whenever you supply something on the e-commerce portal, they will collect some additional amount that is called as TCS. And this TCS, what is collected, will also go and sit in your electronic cash ledger. The advantage of electronic cash ledger, we know, right? You make utilization of the cash ledger for various things. Credit ledger, you can utilize it only for payment of tax, but electronic cash ledger, you can use it for so many things. So can I claim it after a year? Yes, you can claim it, because there is no time limit as such. From whom TCS is collected? From the supplier. Yes, TCS provisions will go in detail, then you will understand it. GST is not included for calculation of TDS. Yes, GST is not included. The value of the supply, on that we deduct TDS or TCS. Correct. In both TDS and TCS, supply के पैसे additional add होते हैं, buyer के नहीं. Both income tax and TDS, GST works in same framework, not on the same framework. It is on a different footing, different platforms. The basic is same, but apart from that, it works completely differently. हाँ, TDS का percentage हम जाएंगे. Value of goods as per the invoice, value as per the invoice, because you will not get into the valuation. Okay, so whatever is the value declared in the invoice, that will be the value for deduction of TDS. Okay, so that is the difference between TDS and TCS. Now we'll get into actuals of TDS. Who is liable to deduct TDS under the GST law? Who is liable to deduct TDS? If it is any department or establishment of the central government or the state government. Okay, not the central government or state government itself. If it is a department or an establishment of the central government or state government. So whenever I supply to these people, only then TDS they will deduct. So if I supply to some private company, will they deduct? No, because in this list, it is only department or establishment of the central government or state government or it could be a local authority, or it could be a government agencies. These are the three things which is there in the law. And fourth one, it says that any other persons or category of the persons as may be notified by the government. So three categories are here, and fourth category is through a notification, and that is notified as follows, saying that following are the persons who are notified under section 51(1)(a) to be who are there, and they will deduct the TDS. So first three categories: central government, state government, then local authorities and government agencies. Then it says any authority or a board or any other body which is set up by an act of the parliament or a state legislature or established by any government with 51% or more participation by way of equity or control to carry out any function. So if there is any authority or a board, मतलब ये सब जो है आप अगर इनको सप्लाई करेंगे तो ये टीडीएस डिडक्ट करेंगे. If you are supplying it to any authority or board, what could be a board? Securities and Exchange Board of India. That is a board जहाँ पे that's set up through an act of parliament and which is established by the government, and 51% or more participation by way of equity or control government के पास है. तो SEBI will be one of those categories. Society which is registered by the central government or a state government. So normal society नहीं है, ये वो वाली सोसाइटी है जो सेंट्रल गवर्नमेंट या स्टेट गवर्नमेंट ने सेटअप की है, right? Or a local authority. Any of these people would have established a central government office. And third category, first category is an authority which is set up by the act of parliament, which is set up by an act of parliament established by any government with 51% or more equity participation. Then second is society which is established by the central government, a society which is established by the government. Third is any public sector undertakings. Okay. Now these are the government authorities, the public sector authorities. But fourth one is very important. It is non-government entities. If any registered person receives supplies of metal scraps, then also he is required to deduct TDS. If a registered person receives, supplier can be registered or unregistered, doesn't matter. It could be any one of them. But the receiver, if he is a registered person receiving supply, as we had said, if supplier also is unregistered, receiver also is unregistered, no TDS, no GST. But if supplier is unregistered, receiver is registered, then he will have to deduct. So a registered person receiving supplies of metal scrap falling under chapter 72 or 81, 72 to 81. So these are the HSN codes. We know HSN code, what we had discussed in the last session. So if the supplier mentions any of these products under these session, under these HSNs, not the normal goods, but scrap goods, metal scrap, 72 to 81. There are various different types of metal, steel, copper, aluminium, various things. So any person who's supplying any of these goods which falls under this tariff heading, 72 to 81, then from that other registered person, you will have to deduct the TDS. Okay. Yeah, a lot of questions. Tax rate always 1%. Always 1%. We did this in registration. Yes, we did this. Value of goods as per section 15. No. हर चीज पे TDS TCS नहीं होता है, सिर्फ specified पे है. Correct. So ICAI has the power to deduct TDS. ICAI also, if they have a board, if it's a board, yes, it's set up by the Act of Parliament. If 51% or more participation is by way of equity by the central government, then yes, say ICAI also will have to deduct. लेजिस्लेशन का क्या काम होता है सर? लेजिस्लेशन बनाने का काम होता है. सप्लाई टू आईसीआई यस होगा. डू वी हैव टू रिमेंबर 72 to 81? यस, रिमेंबर दिस. आपके 72 के अंदर क्या है वो याद रखने की जरूरत नहीं है. जब मेटल स्क्रैप आएगा देन यू हैव टू मेंशन, इफ इट हैव ऑलरेडी गिवन दैट दिस इज फॉलिंग अंडर दिस एचएसएन कोड, इट्स गुड. अगर नहीं देते देन यू हैव टू मेंशन इन द नोट सेइंग दैट टीडीएस इज डिडक्टेड assuming that it is falling under the metal scrap under one of these categories. ठीक है. So in 4 category, both has to be registered, right? Registered person receiving supplies of metal scrap from other registered person. So if one registered person is selling to other, only then clause D will apply. But if it is unregistered, clause A to C will still apply. What is the difference between value of the goods as per invoice and section 15? What is the value what you give in the invoice? That is a transaction value. Now, if it is undercharged, then you go to section 15 for determining the correct value. So that's the difference between what is the value in the invoice and what is determined under section 15. So, but always metal scrap supply will be registered, right? Not necessary. But here, if it is from a registered person to unregistered, because the wordings uses any registered person receiving supplies from other registered person. So in this case, both the supplier and recipient has to be registered. Okay. Then TDS will be on value of the goods. Yes. TDS will be on the value of the goods. Clear? And fourth one is actually an amendment. So that's why you have to be careful that fourth one will be tested for your questions, because government authorities, we all know. So basically, who all you will deduct TDS? Department or establishment of the central government, local authority, government agency, then any authority set up which has more than 51% participation, or a society established under the central government. Sixth is any public sector undertaking. And seventh is any supplier of metal scrap falling under 72 to 81 of the tariff heading. Now, we said that all government undertakings, but the Ministry of Defense came up saying that no, you don't have to deduct TDS. Responsibility is not there for all the defense authorities. Only few defense authorities which is specified, they will deduct TDS, others will not deduct TDS. So TDS provisions are applicable only to certain specified authorities. This is given through notification number 57. You don't have to get into it, but you need to know that yes, there is some notification wherein if you're supplying to defense, not in all instances they will deduct TDS. Only in certain situations TDS they will deduct. A1 and 2 के बीच में और है, 1 and 2 के बीच में क्या है बताइए. So if the metal scrap supplier is unregistered, then no TDS deduction. Correct. Because it uses the word when a supplier is registered. So if the supplier is unregistered, you don't have to deduct. वन एंड टू के बीच में कुछ नहीं है भैया. Okay, so these are the people who will deduct TDS. Now TDS क्या rate पे रहेगा, that we'll see. Following the persons are not liable when goods are supplied from a public sector undertaking to another public sector undertaking, whether or not a distinct person. So one PSU to another PSU, no DDS. And when there is supplying between any of these category, A, B, C जो है, A, B, C, D है, any transaction between an authority of the state legislation, they are supplying to any public sector undertaking, or from public sector undertaking to a society, anything, mix and match, whether A is selling to B, B is selling to C, or A is selling to C. Any transaction between these three also not liable to TDS, which means if there are outside parties, basically private parties who are supplying it If there are non-government entities who are supplying it to a government, then government will deduct TDS. But in case of metal scrap supplier, always there's an exclusion. Metal scrap suppliers will always deduct because it's not a government authority. So in case of metal scrap, if you are supplying something to a metal scrap person, he will always deduct TDS. Okay. Now, but any transactions between authority or a board to another authority or a board, from one society to another society, or from one society to another board, everything of that sort will be not liable to TDS, because anything in between ABC is not liable to TDS. Now, what is the deductees? The supplier who will deduct it is if the supplier whose total value of supply of taxable goods or services under a contract is rupees 2,50,000 or more. So it says when the taxable value of supply of taxable goods or services under a contract exceeds 2,50,000 rupees. So under a one contract, if your value is more than 2,50,000 rupees, then the other person will claim the deducted. Okay. So the receiver will deduct the TDS when you supply him for a value of more than 2,50,000 rupees. How much will he deduct? He will deduct at the rate of 1%. Okay. Whenever there is any supply, so 1% under CGST, 1% under SGST, total he will deduct 2%. Two lakh 50,000 with GST or without GST, 2,50,000. It says where the value of supply, which means without GST. It doesn't say value of the invoice. It says value of the supply. So if the value of your invoice is more than 2,50,000, fine. But you will see that value of the supply before GST, if it is 2,50,000 or above, then you will deduct the TDS. Yeah, TDS is 1% plus 1%. 2% is what you will deduct. And if it's a interstate, then it is 2% altogether. Yeah, if it is less than that, then no TDS. इंटरस्टेट के लिए 2% है, करेक्ट. इंट्रास्टेट के लिए 1% CGST, 1% SGST, और इंटरस्टेट के लिए 2% IGST. सो TDS के लिए जो भी registration है, you have to take a separate registration. For TDS to deduct it, you have to take a separate registration and then do it. Income tax, the net tax liability is reduced by the amount of TDS is similar in GST. Income tax, the net tax liability is reduced by the amount of TDS. Yeah, there it is there, but here you don't have any net tax liability. Whatever is your supplies on that GST, what is payable, from that payable amount, you will use this TDS, because this TDS is like a tax. It's like your cash deposited. So whatever TDS is deducted by the other person, it will come and sit in your cash ledger. So you can utilize it for anything. Okay. Now, there are some category of transaction which is very important that you will not deduct TDS. You have to see three criteria: location of supplier, place of supply, and place of the recipient. Three things: location of supplier, place of supply, and place of the recipient. If the location of the supplier and place of supply both are in the same state, location of supplier and place of supply are in same state, but place of the recipient is in another state, then no TDS shall be deductible. Very important this. When will you deduct TDS? Only when the place of the recipient matches with location of the supplier or place of the supply. If it doesn't match with anyone, then no TDS is deductible. नॉर्मल रजिस्ट्रेशन में टीडीएस नहीं हो सकता है, सेक्शन 51 में सेपरेट रजिस्ट्रेशन लेना पड़ेगा आपको, तभी आप टीडीएस डिडक्ट कर सकते हो. करेक्ट. So TDS deducted will have two registrations, one under normal and one under the TDS. Correct. ये समझ गया? Either it should match with 1, 2 and 3. So 3 will be deducted when the place of the recipient is matching with either 1 or 2. दोनों मैच होना जरूरी नहीं है, अगर एक के साथ भी मैच हो गया then TDS is deductible. If it is separate, then TDS is not deductible at all. Say example, location of the supplier, place of the supply and recipient are in the same state. Then what will happen? TDS is deductible. But deductible as what? Because you also know the quantum and what you will deduct TDS as. Will you deduct CGST, SGST or IGST? Your location of supplier and place of supply are in the same state. So it's an intra-state transaction. So you will deduct CGST plus SGST. Clear? Second scenario, where the location of supplier and place of supply are in a different states. Then what will happen? Then TDS is deductible as IGST, because we know there where the location of supplier and place of supply are in two different states, then it's a interstate integrated transaction wherein interstate transaction is there and you will deduct or you will charge integrated tax. So tax deductible also is linked to that criteria itself. Whatever we had discussed on location of supplier and place of supply, in place of supply provisions, that if the location of supplier and place of supply are in the same state, then CGST and SGST. If the location of supplier and place of supply are in two different states, then IGST. Correct? Similarly, here TDS also is deductible if the location of supplier and place of supply are in different states. Third criteria, location of supplier and place of supply are in the same state, but recipient is in a different state. Then what will happen? No TDS. Correct. Because as I had said, the place of the recipient should match at least with the location of supplier or the place of supply. This slide is important. You have to note this down. So we'll understand this various slides and with examples also. Location of supplier is state A. Place of supply is state A. And the registration of the recipient is also in state A. Then whether TDS is deductible? Yes, TDS is deductible. Scenario 2. Second scenario, location of supplier is in state A, place of supply is in state A, recipient is in state B. Then when TDS is deductible or no? No TDS deductible, because is it possible that all 1, 2, 3 are in different place? Possible. Why not? It is definitely possible. Say a government is in Assam and it is telling the supplier who is in Karnataka to do some advertisement servicing in Bombay. Supplier is in Bangalore, the receiver is in Kolkata, and place of supply is in Bombay. So 3 different places possible. So in this second example, no TDS. Correct. And my example also no TDS. You're right. In third scenario, फिर से समझा देंगे. हाँ, देखिए निधि जी, जब लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर, प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई और रिसिपिएंट सब तीनों एक ही स्टेट में है, तब टीडीएस लगेगा. सेकेंड सिनारियो, जब लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर एंड प्लेस ऑफ सप्लाई एक स्टेट में है लेकिन रिसिपिएंट का स्टेट अलग है, तो रिसिपिएंट का स्टेट एटलीस्ट इसके साथ मिलना चाहिए. मिल रहा है? नहीं मिल रहा है. अगर ये नहीं मिल रहा है तो ये सेकेंड ऑप्शन देखिए, रिसिपिएंट का प्लेस लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर के साथ मिल रहा है? नहीं मिल रहा है. अगर दोनों नहीं मिल रहा है तो टीडीएस डिडक्ट नहीं होगा. ठीक है. थर्ड सिनारियो में देखते हैं, स्टेट ए और स्टेट बी ये मिल रहा है? नहीं मिल रहा है. सेकेंड केस, स्टेट बी और स्टेट बी मिल रहा है, हाँ, तो फिर टीडीएस डिडक्ट करेंगे. इवन इफ वन ऑफ द स्टेट्स मैचेस विद द registration of the recipient, then TDS will be deductible. So in this third case, yes, answers are coming in that yes, in third case, sir, TDS is deductible. It will be IGST. Correct. Now let's go to the fourth scenario. Correct, Isha. Correct, Prem Kumar. Correct, Malini. Correct, Miss P. Almaz, what TDS you will deduct? Somesh, TDS deductible, yes. CGST, SGST, ये पकड़ा गया. कौन बोल रहा है? तनीषा. Why will it be SGST? If registration of recipient and location of supplier is same, but place of supply is different, then which tax? So where the location of supplier and place of supplier is in different state, right? Then IGST will be the relevant tax to be deducted. Devu Mitra, CGST and SGST, wrong. Almaz is saying only CGST. No, it will be CGST and UTGST. Because there is no state here, union territory is involved. So it will be union territory tax along with SGST tax. Next scenario. Where the location recipients replace recipient, registration of the recipient is in union territory 2 and place of supply is union territory 2. So एक स्टेट मैच हो रहा है, एक यूनियन टेरिटरी मैच हो रहा है सेम प्लेस में, तो टीडीएस कटेगा. एंड जो कौन सा टीडीएस कटेगा? लोकेशन ऑफ सप्लायर एंड प्लेस ऑफ सप्लायर इन डिफरेंट स्टेट, सो दे विल डिडक्ट टीडीएस एज IGST. Means TDS will be deducted when the location of supplier and registration of recipient is same, but place of supply is different. Either scenario. So if what you are saying is where the location of supplier and registration of recipient in states is same, yes, then it will be deducted. And in a case where location of supplier and place of recipient is in different state, but the place of supply matches with to the registration of recipient. There also TDS will be deductible. Clear? So yes, in this case, it is deductible. And in the last scenario, good. No TDS is deductible. So whenever you get a question, you mention these 3 points in your answer sheet: location of supplier, place of supply, location of the recipient. Then just do the marking. Either A is equal to C or B is equal to C. If one of them matches, then TDS is deductible. In this case, C is not matching with A, C is not matching with B as well. So TDS is not deductible. Clear? So now how clear are you or no, we'll get to know. I'll give you a question. First one. First, let's target the first one. Yes, TDS is deductible. Yeah. July Kumari, yes, not deductible in third case. अरे यार, आप third case में चले गए. Correct. So first case, everybody is in line, right? TDS is applicable at the rate of 2%, 1% CGST, 1% SGST. Yes, you can draw a chart. Definitely, why not? You can. Presentation के लिए तो अच्छा ही है ना. Examiner भी खुश हो जाएगा. You can draw charts. Second one, yes, TDS at 2%. Very nice. ये तो चार्ज कर रहा है ना CGST एंड SGST, तो फिर TDS क्यों नहीं लगेगा भैया? Third case, no TDS, correct? Because the recipient's registration is not matching with either the location of the supplier or the place of supply. You're right. So what is the crux? That place of supply, place of the recipient should match either with the location of supplier or place of supply. Okay. Now the procedure is that when you deduct the TDS, what you have to do, you have to remit it to the government. When you should remit it? For the deductions, what you do this month, by the 10th of the succeeding month, you have to deduct. So whatever deductions you do in the month of June, by 10th of July, you have remitted to the government through a return called as GSTR 7. And once that is there, then you will issue to the recipient or the supplier a TDS certificate through GSTR 7A. You will file a return in 7 and it will reflect for him in GSTR 7A. If you don't deduct it on time, then you're liable to pay interest. Okay. So as a metal scrap buyer or a government, it takes the TDS deduction, they do it, but they don't remit it. Then they will pay interest for the delayed period. Amount of TDS will reflect in the electronic cash ledger. So that will always reflect in the cash ledger. Registration, a person who is required to deduct TDS shall submit an application on the common portal. And once you file it on the common portal, it will get approved, verified, and then approved. And then you can deduct the TDS. Then, if you deduct excess TDS and you have remitted to the government, but you have not remitted to the other person, आपने ज़्यादा पे कर दिया है, आपको जमा करना था 10,000, आपने जमा कर दिया है 25,000. So extra 15,000 you can claim back as refund, and that also applies to the deductee. So a deductee who is supplying to you, now you have deducted TDS to him. Now his liability was not that much, but you have deducted more, or you have deducted 1% itself, but he is not liable to pay GST, then he can claim the refund of that. So refund provision is possible. Sir, if it is state, it will be SGST. If it is UT, UT GST will apply. But in both cases, CGST will be included. Correct. Because in any taxation, we've known that when there is a intra-state supply, CGST plus SGST in case of a state and CGST plus UTGST in case of a union territory. That will definitely be there. Same like your place of supply provisions. So deductor only metal scrap supplier or government only. Correct. Correct. Metal scrap buyer, yes, it will be a metal scrap buyer or government authorities or government entities or a PSU who will be able to deduct it. Who will claim the refund? So if the supplier, I'm supplying and the receiver is deducted TDS, but my tax liability was zero, so I will claim the refund. Now that is the first scenario. Second scenario is the government has deducted TDS. They have to remit it back to the GST authorities. They have deducted totally 50,000 rupees, but they have remitted 80,000 rupees. So that 30,000 rupees, they can also claim the refund. So if they deposit excess, they can claim it. If excess is deposited in my account, then I can claim the refund. Clear? So that was all the simple provisions of TDS. Government deposit to GST, yes, government also will deposit to the GST because each government authorities are different. Like how we see the government authorities, everybody is same. Within the government also transaction happens. So they will also deposit to the GST authorities. Since TDS is deducted, so we cannot say that it is paid out of ECRL or ECL. I didn't understand your question, Ishan.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
Sir, I just want to ask, like TDS is deducted by the supplier, right?
TDS is not
No,
deducted
sorry,
by
sorry. TDS is deducted by the recipient. So
correct.
we cannot say that it is paid out of electronic credit ledger or cash ledger, right?
See, in case of TDS, they will not have any electronic credit ledger because once they do a GST registration, normal GST registration, they will have electronic credit ledger and cash ledger.
Yes.
But in case of a TDS, they will take a registration, separate registration. There, they will not have any electronic credit ledger at all.
Yes.
because they have to deposit that money to the electronic cash ledger. From the cash ledger only they can remit the TDS.
So like the TDS, that like the TDS will come to electronic cash ledger, right?
Correct.
So we
Correct.
cannot apply 86B here.
We don't have to apply that. Yes.
Yes. Thank you, sir.
Correct. GSTR 7 is for the return filed by the deductor. You're right. Correct. Okay. So next is tax collected at source. So before getting into TCS, we'll take a break and we'll come back. So keep the TDS questions live and we will answer that.
Sir, I'll get now.
related here. See, Rule 86B, Golti, Anil, and somebody was asking, Chauhan Tej Prakash. 86B says that when you have to pay any taxes, you can use electronic credit ledger only to the extent of 99%, 1% you have to pay cash. Will that apply in case of TDS and TCS? No, it will not apply, because that is when a regular taxpayer has to pay the taxes. There, he has to utilize 99% of the credit and 1% to cash. So that is not related here, is what we are talking. Yes, yes, you're right, Chauhan Tej Prakash. Only electronic cash ledger is there in TDS registration. Yes. What is the meaning of determination of amount in default in page 14.11? 14.11. Okay. Yes, ma'am. Determination of amount of default. That is, somebody has to pay the TDS, correct? A government entity has to pay the TDS. Now they've defaulted. They've not paid it. So how do you determine that amount? That amount will be determined through the provisions of section 73 or 74 is what the portion is saying, that if anybody has like short paid, then you will pay interest under 50. And if you have not paid the taxes to the government, then you will pay the taxes, and the notice and determination will happen through section 73 and 74. How cross-checking is possible in page 14.11? What is cross-checking? That, so when you deduct, society can also, so when you supply something, the other person deducts it and it comes in your cash ledger. So then the cross-check will happen. You don't have to wait for GST or 7A, because there will not be a physical certificate which will get. Okay. So once the other person deducts it, it will reflect in your online portal. Society can also supply to itself. How can society supply to itself? How can you supply to yourself? Is it possible? To another society. Okay. So from one society, which is that society what they're talking? They're not talking about all the general societies. Please be careful. A society which is established by the central government, not our housing societies and things. This is a society which is established by the central government, like Science Gallery Bangalore. It is a private limited company, but K-Steps. There is a society which is registered in Karnataka, and it is formed by the central government. It is formed by the state government, or it is formed by a local authority, such society. So one such society of the government doing transaction with another society, then TDS will not apply. Not another society. Okay, you have to be careful that what they are using. They are saying that specific societies which is established by the central government, state government, or a local authority. अमेंडमेंट्स के 6 क्लासेस एक अलग होगा चौहान, तब आप आपके क्वेश्चंस पूछ सकते हो. In persons not liable to deduct TDS, it is given supply between A, B, C, and D except persons referred in D. So what does it mean? So any supplies between A, B, C, and D except D, because earlier it was A, B, C, D. Then they have amended and included other than referred in D. So any transaction between A, B, and C, in between them, in between these three, will be no liability for GST. But if it is with anybody who is dealing with metal scrap, then even if he's supplying to the government, they will deduct it. Correct, Asta. So central government, state government are a local authority. Now, local authority means what? It means municipal corporation, panchayat. They are the local authorities. Okay. Yes, in problem solving आप पूछ सकते हो चौहान. So now we'll quickly go to TCS provisions. Now, what is TCS? जैसे हमने देखा था कि first only we understood in the first 5 minutes only everybody could grasp it that when a cake is given to you, you have ordered for one cake, but additionally I'm giving you a smaller pie also. Now this smaller pie is the tax collected at source that you did not want it, but I am giving it to you and you have to pay me for both of this. That is the concept of tax collected at source. So I'm collecting the taxes at the source itself. Okay. I'm not deducting in this case, I am collecting. And TCS is collected, or the provisions of TCS is only applicable for e-commerce operators. Now, what is this e-commerce operators? The meaning of electronic commerce is very important. E-commerce means supply of goods or supply of services or supply of goods and services, including digital products over a digital network or an electronic network. That is e-commerce. Simply, very simple. E-commerce means a person who is supplying services or supplying both goods and services, including digital products over the digital network or electronic network. मतलब ये इलेक्ट्रॉनिक नेटवर्क या फिर डिजिटल नेटवर्क को यूज करके आपको सप्लाई कर रहा है. ओके. नाउ दिस इलेक्ट्रॉनिक नेटवर्क, वन मोमेंट. So whenever a transaction is done over the internet, on the online, on a mobile app, then it is treated as a e-commerce transaction, electronic commerce transaction, where the supplier will not be the electronic commerce directly, it will be somebody else. So when a transaction is done over the electronic commerce, that is called as a e-commerce transaction. And electronic commerce, who runs it? So any person who owns, operates, or manages this electronic commerce, he is called an electronic commerce operator. Okay, it will be digital, electronic facility, platform, or electronic commerce. Okay, so e-commerce will mean any person who supply goods or services through a electronic network. तो जब भी आप Amazon, Flipkart या किसी और ऐप से खरीदते हो, you are doing a transactions on the e-commerce portal. तो जब भी हम इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कॉमर्स के थ्रू करते हैं, then it will be a transaction which is happening on a electronic commerce transaction. Now there are different types of various type of transactions which can happen through e-commerce. It is supply of goods through e-commerce. Now e-commerce में आपको goods भी मिलेगा, services भी मिलेगा. Okay. Now goods के केस में क्या होगा और service के केस में क्या होगा? Whenever you're buying some products from the Amazon, it is supply of goods. And if you're booking some flight tickets, you're booking some stay, that is supply of services. Okay, supply of goods and supply of services. TCS is a little complicated than TDS. You have to be a little attention. So when you supply goods, then it is subject to TCS. So whenever a supplier supply goods on the Amazon or Flipkart TCS collect karega hi, because you are supplying goods there. Now, if you are supplying services through e-commerce, if it is notified, so first ये clear हो गया आपको कि अगर आप goods बेच कर रहे हो, so there is no confusion, TCS लगेगा. And if you're supplying services, then you have to come to this criteria first. If it is a notified services, okay, then e-commerce operator has to pay GST under reverse charge, and TCS is not applicable at all. Okay. So when a supplier supplies services through this e-commerce operator, then e-commerce operator will pay the taxes on behalf of these notified services. तो अगर पूरा टैक्स ही ई कॉमर्स पर रहा है तो फिर टीसीएस की बात ही नहीं है. एंड इफ दिस इज अदर देन नोटिफाइड सर्विसेज, देन टीसीएस विल बी एप्लीकेबल अंडर 52. क्लियर? ऑनलाइन पोर्टल पे टीसीएस यूज होता है. यस, ऑनलाइन पोर्टल पे टीसीएस यूज होता है. Yes, you have to remember those notified services. So if there is notified services, then the e-commerce operator themselves will pay it. From whom e-commerce collects the tax? E-commerce collects the tax from the customer, right? So I will tell you how this happens. These are the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 services which is specified under section 9 subsection 5, which we have already discussed when we were discussing charge of GST. Just trying to refresh or reproduce this for your easy understanding. On these transactions, the tax will be paid by the e-commerce operator. Service by way of transportation of passengers by a radio taxi, motor cab, maxi cab, motor cab, any other motor vehicle except omnibus, ओला उबर में जब भी आप जाते हो उनको टीसीएस नहीं लगता है. टीसीएस इज नॉट अप्लीकेबल. द टैक्स व्हाट हैज टू बी पेड बाय द कैब पर्सन विल बी पेड बाय द ओला और उबर इटसेल्फ, राइट? तो पूरा टैक्स जब ई कॉमर्स भर रहा है तो अलग से टीसीएस कलेक्ट करने की जरूरत नहीं है, राइट? दैट इज द फर्स्ट थिंग. सेकेंड इज if there are services by way of transportation of passengers by an omnibus, except when the person supplying such service through e-commerce is a company. So similar to transportation, but if you are using the omnibus, then TCS will not apply. Full tax will be paid by the e-commerce operator. Third is services by way of providing accommodation in hotels, inns and guests. They say Airbnb. If you're using Airbnb and they are providing, then in that case, Airbnb only will pay the full tax. Hotel person will not pay any tax. Fourth condition is when there is service of housekeeping such as plumbing. इसके लिए क्या एग्जांपल है? Urban clap, correct. Urban clap is a good example there. That when he services of a urban clap, जो रिपेयर करने वाला प्लम्बर आएगा वो कुछ पे नहीं करेगा. That taxes will be paid by a urban clap itself. Fifth condition is when there is a supply of restaurant services through a e-commerce operator, then the e-commerce operator will pay it. For this, we have a lot of examples. You know it, right? Swiggy, Zomato, very nice. So these are the situations where they are specified under 9(5). So these five are the specified services on which tax will be paid by the e-commerce operator and TCS is not applicable. Chauhan Tej Prakash is saying, I'm confused in A and B. Please in Hindi explain. ठीक है. A केस में जब बोलता है कि आप कैब, टैक्सी, मैक्सी कैब, मैक्सी कार, मोटरसाइकिल जब आप यूज करते हो तब उसका टीसीएस नहीं लगेगा और उसका टैक्सेस ई कॉमर्स पे करेगा. सेकेंड है जब आप ट्रांसपोर्ट करते हो ओमनी बस से. मतलब ओमनी बस का मतलब ये है कि आप कैब यूज नहीं कर रहे हो, आप एक बस यूज कर रहे हो, मिनी बस वगैरह, जो आपको डायरेक्टली बस वाला नहीं मिल रहा है. वो भी उबर या ओला वैसे कंपनीज होते हैं, ई कॉमर्स कंपनीज, जो आपको पूरा बस देते हैं. तो अगर आप वो ओमनी बस लेते हो तब भी उबर या ओला आपका पूरा टैक्स पे करेगी, ड्राइवर पे नहीं करेगा. एक्सेप्ट व्हेन द पर्सन सप्लाइंग सच सर्विस इज अ ई कॉमर्स थ्रू ई कॉमर्स इज अ कंपनी. अभी वो बस का ओनर अगर एक कंपनी है, ठीक है, तो ई कॉमर्स पे नहीं करेगा. वो कंपनी जो ओनर है उस बस का, उस फ्लीट्स का, वो पे करेगा टैक्स. ठीक है. करेक्ट. सो वही तो मैंने बोला भाई कि ए एंड बी ट्रांसपोर्टेशन के लिए ही है. जस्ट वन मोमेंट. So in these situations, these are the specified situations. Can you explain once with example how TCS is collected? Yes, we'll go to that. So now once you understood this exclusion, right, then we can go to the aspect. So these are the five things on which TCS will not apply. What TCS will apply, we'll come back to the previous slide. If in B part supplier is a company, then under non-notified, correct. If B is a supplier, then A is non-notified, correct. Then TCS will apply. So supply of goods through e-commerce. So this part we understood that there are 5 notified services. Okay. When there are these 5 notified services, that person will pay the taxes. E-commerce will pay the complete taxes. No need of paying any TCS. If there are services other than this, जैसे bankbazaar.com, policybazaar.com, जिसमें आपको इंश्योरेंस पॉलिसी ई-कॉमर्स ऑपरेटर विल सेल. Now in that cases, what is happening? It is not notified services, so it is falling under other than notified services. On that transaction, e-commerce will pay the TCS. Now, in this case of e-commerce operators, which is for goods, all the goods, and for services other than notified services, e-commerce will pay the taxes. Now, how this works, I will show you with an example. Now, what is the rate? The rate for TCS is not like a TDS. TDS is 2%. TCS is very small, 0.25% of CGST, 0.25% of SGST. Okay. Which is just 0.5% totally. Earlier, it was 0.5, 0.51%. From 10 July 2024, it has got changed. So, which you have to consider that the rate is 0.25% plus 0.25%, which is 0.5%. Okay. Now, how do we understand this? Apollonia is a seller who is supplying the goods. Okay. He is supplying the goods through an e-commerce. Okay. Now, if he is a seller who is supplying goods through e-commerce and in this scenario, what will happen? That Apollonia is a seller on e-commerce operator, and he is selling to Rohit Sharma, who is a customer. जैसे हमारे जैसे कस्टमर है, हम कस्टमर से, we don't know the supplier. Apollonia, I'm just giving you an example. It's the name of a company who is supplying the goods through e-commerce operator. Now he is a seller. He's selling goods on Amazon portal, 1,000 rupees. हमने क्लिक कर लिया, with GST लगा के वो हमको डिलीवर करेगा गुड्स. निधि, जो एग्जाम्पल आपने पूछना है वो यहाँ पे कवर हो जाएगा. ठीक है, सो पे अटेंशन टू दिस. So he's a seller who is selling goods on the e-commerce portal. Amazon is an e-commerce portal, and I am the buyer, so I have to pay 1,120. तो मैं किसको पे करूंगा? Will I pay directly to Apollonia? I will not pay. I will pay to Amazon. करेक्ट. ये तो हमको सबको पता है सर, आपको क्या पता नहीं है? ये तो हम रोज खरीदते हैं, रोज एक ना एक नया कोरियर आता है. करेक्ट. सो वी विल pay the amount to Amazon. Rohit Sharma will pay to Amazon. Amazon will deduct its commission, and then he will pay it to Apollonia. Correct? Now, this is the normal scenario of cash flow which will happen. Now, we have said that when Amazon pays to Apollonia, he will give a cake and a pie. Right? He will give a cake and a pastry also. तो Amazon जो सेलर है, सेलर बोलेगा मैंने 1,000 रुपए पे किया है, आप मुझे 1,000 रुपए दीजिए. बट Amazon विल टेल नहीं, आपको मुझे कुछ और भी देना है. What is that? That is TCS. Now this TCS will flow from Apollonia to Amazon, and Amazon will pay this to the government. This TCS will get collected from here. कितना परसेंटेज? 0.5%. सो 1,000 रुपए पे 50 रुपए लेगा, और ये क्या करेगा? Amazon गवर्नमेंट को देगा. सो हाउ मच शुड Amazon पे टू अपोलोनिया फिर? ओके, इसका कमीशन भी मैं बता देता हूँ. ठीक है, वॉट एवर इज द कमीशन. 1,120 माइनस कमीशन, रॉन्ग. 1,170, रॉन्ग. से कमीशन इज 50 रुपीज, एंड आई एम सॉरी, द कैलकुलेशन हियर इज रॉन्ग. 1,000 के ऊपर 0.5% इज, आपकी किसी ने ध्यान नहीं दिया. इट्स नॉट 50, इट्स जस्ट 5 रुपीज. Not 5%, it is 0.5%, which is 5 rupees. This is the TCS. And say his commission is 50 rupees. Yes, Nidhi.
सर अगर कमीशन 0.5 से है तो कमीशन 50 और टीसीएस 5 कैसे हुआ, ये नहीं समझ रहा.
आवाज नहीं आ रही, फिर से बोलिए.
सर मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि 50 रुपीज कमीशन कैसे हुआ अगर हम टीसीएस 5 रुपीज कलेक्ट कर रहे हैं तो.
टीसीएस गवर्नमेंट ने कहा है कि 5.5% है. ठीक है.
यस सर.
तो टीसीएस 0.5%, 1,000 रुपए का 0.5% कितना होगा?
5 रुपए.
तो 5 रुपए टीसीएस है.
तो सर कमीशन कैसे कैलकुलेट हुआ कि 50 रुपीज आया है?
कमीशन तो हम कैलकुलेट कर रहे हैं, ये इन दोनों की मारामारी है. अमेजोन और अपोलोनिया ने डिसाइड किया कि ये 50 रुपए कमीशन देगा.
ओके.
वो तो गवर्नमेंट डिसाइड नहीं कर सकता, कमीशन तो उनका मतभेद है.
Yes,
करेक्ट।
yes.
तो अमेजोन ने कहा कि तुम 1,000 रुपए का माल बेचोगे तो 50 रुपए मुझे कमीशन।
That's it.
मेरा क्वेश्चन, अगर आपका क्वेश्चन सॉल्व हो गया तो मेरा क्वेश्चन का आंसर दीजिए आप अभी। या फ्यू करेक्ट आंसर्स, फ्यू रॉन्ग आंसर्स, बट कौन सा क्वेश्चन है? अरे वाह, आप तो क्लास में अटेंशन ही पे नहीं कर रहे हो। तो अमेजोन जो रोहित शर्मा पे करेगा 1,120, उसमें से उसका कमीशन लेस करेगा, विच इज 1,120 माइनस 50, 1,070. Then this TCS, which he has to pay him, anyways, Amazon has to pay. Now, from that payment, he will reduce this amount of 5 rupees and pay balance 1,065 to Apollonia. Clear? Eh? So this is how the TCS provision works, 0.5% on the transaction value. So taxes will ultimately be paid by Apollonia to the government. This 5 rupees Amazon will collect and pay it on the government, which will go to the electronic cash ledger. When Apollonia remits 120, it can deduct 5 rupees. TCS would not be separate from 1120. Yes, it is separate. That's why it is tax collected at source. That's why it is 1,120 plus 5. That's why it is getting ultimately collected by Amazon. Correct? It had to pay 1,070, but it is paying 5 less because 5 it is paid to the government. Amazon can avail credit. Amazon, what is the Amazon in this transaction? Just this transaction, Amazon does not have any credit. 0.5, not 0.005, 0.5%. अपोलोनिया कब पे करेगा? अभी अपोलोनिया का सेल्स जैसे जून मंथ में है, तो जुलाई मंथ का जो जून मंथ का रिटर्न जो जुलाई में फाइल करेगा, तब वो 120 पे करेगा। और अमेजोन जो है, अमेजोन जून का ट्रांजैक्शन है, तो फिर वो जून का रिटर्न 10th को फाइल करेगा, तब 10th तक अमेजोन के अपोलोनिया के इलेक्ट्रॉनिक कैश लेजर में 10 रुपए आ जाएंगे। Yes, there is some limit. Here, how is it charged on the customer? It's charged on supplier, right? It's yes, that's why he's getting the credit. So it's not charged on the customer. Customer ko you're charging 120 rupees. You are not charging the customer again the TCS. TCS is charged on the supplier itself. No, this is not like TDS. Had TDS been deducted, then Apollonia will deduct it. But here, Apollonia is the seller. It is paying extra tax. That's why it's a TCS. Why we reduced 5 here? Because 5 has to be paid by Apollonia. So if Amazon pays to Apollonia full 1,070, it will collect 5 again. So what is the difference that I will pay you 1,070, you will give me 5 rupees. So I have to anyways pay you 1,070. I will square off and pay you the balance amount. No, it is not on 1,070. It is 1,000. That is the value of the supply on that 0.5%. It is not on 1,070. Correct. TCS will be remitted by Amazon to the government. 1,120 is not inclusive of TCS, Baba. See, 1,120. You do the math otherwise. I will tell you, Ishan. Let's do this calculation. 1120 plus TCS of 5 rupees, which is 1125, correct? Minus the commission of 50. So how much is this? Mm-mm-mm. 1075. You're right. 1120. Commission TCS of 0.5% is collected, right? But the collection, what is happening is collection is happening from the customer by the Amazon. So they've collected 1120. 5 is right. You're right. So 1120 minus 5, right? Because 1120 Amazon has to pay Apollonia, correct? And Apollonia has to pay Amazon 5 rupees. So it will be 1120 minus 5. So it is 1115 minus 50, which makes it 1065. Yeah, correct. Apollonia doesn't pay 5. It is deducted by Amazon's balance ultimately. 120 is the GST. Yes. I'm assuming here 12% is the rate. So 120 is the GST. Correct. GST will be on 1000 that supplier has to pay the government, but will get credit of TCS and net will be paid to the government. Correct. जीएसटी पेएबल 120 होगा, कैश लेजर में कम हो जाएगा बस. टैक्स पेएबल टू द गवर्नमेंट विल बी 120 इटसेल्फ. आप कैश से पे करोगे उसमें 120 जीएसटी है, करेक्ट. सर इन दिस केस में अमेजोन को भी रजिस्टर होना होता है क्या? हाँ. अब वो जो भी कमीशन कलेक्ट कर रहा है उसके ऊपर वो अलग से चार्ज कराएगा, तो अमेजोन को रजिस्टर तो होना ही पड़ेगा. पेमेंट विल बी वैल्यू प्लस जीएसटी प्लस टीसीएस. नो, see, it will not be value plus GST plus TCS. It will be value plus GST, and the seller is kind of adding the TCS. So TCS, what you have to pay me, I have to pay, I'm netting it off that way. Yes, supplier को TCS भी electronic cash ledger में ही मिलेगा. You're right. Both TDS and TCS is reducing the value of supply. Then why only TCS is excluded while calculating aggregate turnover for registration? No, because it's an additional charge. TDS is a deduction. TCS is an additional charge. That's why it's excluded. Yes, Apollonia will get credit of 5 rupees. To claim TCS, supplier has to pay through electronic cash ledger, cannot through electronic credit ledger. No. Both TDS and TCS, Astha, you have to do the transfer or file the return and give the credit to the other person through cash ledger only. Can we utilize for paying tax? Yes, definitely you can utilize for paying tax. So 945 will be the value to the supplier and 120 GST out of 1065. 945. So you're excluding the commission. But commission is a expense and sales is a income. So both are separate. Net profitability will be 1000 minus 50. Okay. But and the 5 will be a balance sheet item. So 1000 rupees will be the sales, 50 rupees will be the commission. Profit is 950 rupees, not 945, because 5 is not an expense. It's like a payment of the tax in advance. Correct. 5 will be credited back to the seller, ma. Definitely. Your buyer but doesn't pay. Buyer तो 120 pay कर रहा है ना. Oh, lot of confusion here. I thought this will solve the problem, but this is creating a lot of confusion. As we get credit of TCS in electronic cash ledger, then the amount of remaining tax liability will have to be paid through cash ledger. So we can claim credit of TCS. You're right. Okay. We will read the other provisions of TCS so that we will understand it. I think hopefully much better. Okay. So we understood that supply of services through e-commerce for notified services, taxes will be paid by TCS. No, taxes will be paid by the e-commerce operator, no TCS. The specified services. Now, there are 3-4 models of e-commerce operator. When you sell your own products through your own website, then it is not an e-commerce. When e-commerce happens, when you sell your products to some other website. So if you're selling products on your own website, TCS provisions are not applicable. If you sell brought out products through your own website, like before Amazon and Flipkart were there today, now where they are buying from others and selling it, there are other companies which buy it, stock it, and then they sell it. So when you buy it, you are buying it and you are selling it, then you're not an e-commerce. You will become an e-commerce when you're using your platform to sell others' goods. If you're buying the goods and selling it yourself, you are only trading, then also you're not an e-commerce, so TCS provisions not applicable. Third is when you're merely facilitating the transaction between supplier and customer, and you're not owning the goods, and you're billing directly by the seller to the customer, and consideration is collected by the operator, then your e-commerce TCS provisions will be applicable, and operator shall deduct TCS while making the payment. Correct? So TCS, as you had correctly pointed out, Ishan, it's a deduction. You're right. So that's why we are deducting it there. So even though it's called tax collected source, mathematically, it's a deduction. Clear? So when it is through your own thing, no deduction. When you are buying and selling, no deduction. Only if you're facilitating buyer and seller, then TCS will apply. Standard rate of TCS 0.25% under CGST and under SGST makes it as 0.5%. Therefore, for IGST, it will be 0.5%. For CGST and SGST, it will be 0.25 and 0.25. Now, on what value you will deduct TCS? Where the aggregate value of taxable supplies of goods and services, what you're supplying, minus the taxable supplies, which is returns. Generally, Amazon, Flipkart वगैरह को हम famous क्यों बनाते हैं? Returns की वजह से. So all that returns net off करके जो net value रहेगा, उसके ऊपर 0.5% पे करना होगा. So TCS क्या बोलता है? Person liable to collect TCS, e-commerce operator. Threshold limit कुछ है? Somebody was asking. No, there is no threshold limit. Rate will be 0.5%. Value will be the net value. Due date will be within 10 days from the end of the month. Clear? This is what we have learned. Now there's a question for you. But before that, I place a question. Any more questions which you have? So even for 100 rupees goods, TCS will apply, correct? कमीशन तो कौन डिसाइड करता है? Amazon डिसाइड करता है कि उसके प्लेटफॉर्म की आपको लिस्टिंग करनी है, तो फिर वो आपको बताएगा कि आपके प्रोडक्ट अगर मेरे Amazon पे बेचने हैं तो फिर आपको इतना कमीशन लगेगा. Amazon ही डिसाइड करता है. Arre baapre. There are so many different answers for this, ranging from, I'll tell you the range. TDS, one is saying 2000, one is saying 3600, one is saying 5000, one is saying 20,000, one is saying 10,000. Amazing. What is the TDS rate? %2. तो आप 11,800 which is inclusive of GST, उसके ऊपर TDS कितना लगेगा? Very simple, 20,000, right? 20,000 is the TDS. As per provisions of Section 51, the local authority has to deduct tax at 1%, not 50 subsection, it's 51. Deduct tax at 1% from the payment made or credited to the supplier of taxable goods or services where the total value of such supply under a contract exceeds 2,50,000. यहाँ पे contract value is 10 lakhs, so it is deductible. Such has to be paid to the government by a deductor within 10 days from the end of the month in which such deduction is made, in such manner as may be prescribed. Otherwise, interest shall be levied at 18% for the period. So in this case, tax to be deducted will be 2%. Here the answer is wrong. It is 10 lakhs into 2%. Interest is also levied. Yes, he has to pay this by when he's deducted on 25th December. So he has to remit by 10th of January. Now he is remitted on 28th March. So interest will apply. What will be the interest amount? Yes, please calculate. Exactly my point. Correct, Ma, your calculation is right. 414, nahi to. So what is the due date? Due date is 10th January. Correct? क्योंकि कब डिडक्ट किया था? December deduction is on 10th January. From 10th January he had to pay, but he's paid on 28th March. कितना हुआ days of delay? January 31, days. 31 minus 10 makes it 21 days. February 21 में 28 days. And March 28 days. Makes it as 77 days. Correct? So 20,000 is the interest for the TDS which is payable. 20,000 into 18% divided by 365 into 77 days gives the answer of roughly 759 rupees. $20,000 into 18% into 77 divided by 365. 92 days. How come 92 days? What कहाँ से count किया आपने दिव्या? January, the due date is 10th, and January you have 31 days. So January delay is 21 days, Feb 28 days, March 28 days. Total कितना हुआ भाई? Total of 77 days delay. December 26. Why December 26? As soon as you deduct, you will pay it off. You can't. No, you have a timely return due date. And the return date for December is January. So you have to calculate from the due date of the return. Yeah. Any more doubts on this question or anything else? Due date of return is 10th of the subsequent month, Baba. हाँ निधि करेक्ट है 759.4 या तो फिर 759 कीजिए या 760 कीजिए सिंस इट इज लेस देन 50 पैसा तो हम जनरली 759 लेते हैं यस यस पवन कुमार जैन 30 कैसे होगा जैन में 31 डेज है ड्यू डेट है 10th सो बैलेंस 21 डेज बचते हैं ना ओके तो जिस तरह उस दिन आपको स्वीट नहीं मिला आज भी केक पूरा नहीं मिलेगा थोड़ा कट के ही मिलेगा दैट इज टीडीएस विच विल गेट डिडक्टेड and TCS will not apply to you. You will not get an extra pie because we are not dealing through e-commerce. Interest 6,835. Wrong, Mohammed Farhan. How will you get 6,835? Yes, interest rate is 18%, but You have to be careful. 18% is per annum. You have to calculate based on number of days of delay. Okay, thank you very much. Hope TDS and TCS you could understand properly. Any other questions? I think we didn't have time today. So next class, we will be discussing further. During that time, if you have any questions, you can answer. If we utilize 5 rupees for paying tax, then net effective tax 115. Correct. 120 is payable, 5 rupees you have utilized. So payable to the government will be 115. If an assessee has cash crunch, 18% if it is beneficial, yes, he can use that. But the problem is if you delay your returns, your customers won't get the credit. So that is another issue, not only a cash crunch. Is there interest for TDS? Yes. Similar like TCS, for delay, you have interest under TDS also. Same at the rate of 18%. Okay, thank you very much. We'll see you in the next class.